I would like to specify my system configurations. I'm on Ubuntu 12.04 and I'm using Pentaho BI Server Enterprise Edition 4.5 and the Schema Workbench is 3.3 version. Okay. So now, before we move on to the Schema Workbench, I would like to take a simple example and as how we can create a schema using the Pentaho BI Server frontend. So first, I would create a data source. Like I would go into the BI server, log in with the user credentials, and then new data source, file new data source, and then I would specify a data source name, set example test, and then I would select what type of data source is. I would like to use my database table, so I would simply select on database table, and here I would specify my database configuration. So I have already defined a database connection with webinar OLAP. So I'll just edit and show the configuration details. So all that we would be specifying is the connection name and the host name, database name, and the port and the username and all the credentials required, and select the database that you would like to use. I'm currently using MySQL, so this is my database. So if you just click on test, that will indicate if there were any errors in connecting to the database. So I'm good to go now. So I just click on OK. So this is how we can create a data source. So now let's see how we can use this data source to create simple analyzer reports. So now I go to File, New, Analyzer Report. So I have already created this data source. So I would like to use my example1 data source. Let me first edit this data source and show you how I have created this. What I've basically done here is I've used the webinar OLAP database connection, and then I've used reporting and analysis. I've used a star schema model because I'm using a fact table and 3-dimension tables. So it's just not on the single database table. That's why I'm using the star schema option. So when I click on next, it gives me the list of the tables that are available in my database. So Pentaho OLAP is my database of the schema. So the following are all the tables available under that schema. I can select the tables that I need. So in this case, I would like to use fact sales, I would like to use DIM customer, I would like to use DIM day and DIM product. And I do have to specify what my fact table is. So in this case, my fact table is fact sales. So that's what I have defined it here. So next, I click on next to connect these tables. I have already connected. The way I connect these tables is, for example, on the left side is the fact table. On my right are the dimension tables. So I click on the customer ID and I link it to the customer ID on my dimension table. So, and I just click on create join to create this join. This is how I've created all the 3 joins. Say if I want to use a different dimension table, I just go here, scroll to the other dimension table, select that, and then I link it to the appropriate key in my fact table. Say for example, DIM day. I want to link that to datascape, so I highlight the datascape in my dimension table, and I do the similar thing on my fact table. So I would like to create a join between these two. So this is how I have created join between customer, date, and product with my fact table. Say for example, if I've created any wrong join, I want to get rid of it, I just highlight that, click on it to highlight it, and just say delete the join. So that's how I create. Once I'm happy with my joins and I've connected all my dimensions with all the facts, then I just click on finish. This is how we create the data source. So now I would like to use this data source to create a simple analyzer report. So what I do is I go to File, New, Analyzer Report. It gives me an option to select the data source. So I would like to use my example one data source that I just created. So I click on that. Okay. So now I can pull in, drag in the columns that I need, and I can create a simple analyzer report. Say for example, I would like to pull in my customer name. I would like to pull in the product name and a measure quantity ordered. So this is how it allows me to create the basic report. So what is why do we need Schema Workbench? What is the extra or the advantages that provides us over these basic data sources? So a simple example would be, say for example, I create a new analyzer report with the same data source. I pull in my month name column, and see the way it appears is it just appears in an alphabetical form. I can right click on it and try to sort that, but the only two options that it gives by default is to sort alphabetically, either A to Z or Z to A. So I don't want my months to appear in this fashion. I want them to appear in the way they come in the year. So it's January to December. So how would I do that? I cannot do that in the analyzer. I cannot do that by defining a data source on my BI server. So the only way I can do that is using a Schema Workbench. So now, before I go into a Schema Workbench, I would like to give a brief introduction on what the Schema Workbench is and what it basically does. The Mondrian Schema Workbench is a graphical interface that is provided as a plugin with the Pentaho suite, and it allows us to create the Mondrian OLAP schemas. Each schema can have multiple cubes, and each cube can have multiple dimensions but can only have one fact table. So you can define as many dimensions as you want, and then you can define each cube with a single fact table and multiple dimension tables. So that's the basic thing. And all that the Schema Workbench creates is the metadata models, which are nothing but the Mondrian XML files. So what is a Mondrian schema or a Mondrian cube? That is a logical model of a multi-dimensional database which consists of cubes, hierarchies, and members. So for example, in this, I can create different hierarchies. Let me bring in another example. Say for example, Indian products, I can create hierarchies, and these are all the members within that hierarchy. So this Schema Workbench allows us to do all this stuff. Let me just introduce how we start with the Schema Workbench. The first thing that we need to be aware of is our Pentaho BI server should be up and running. And the second thing that we need to do is we need to go and find where we have installed our Schema Workbench. So I have installed it locally under my Pentaho folder, Schema Workbench, and I just click on workbench.sh file. I can use option run in terminal or just run to open the window. This is how we connect to the Schema Workbench. We should be aware that we need to keep our BI server up and running. Once I have this is how the window looks. So this is how the Schema Workbench looks. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to connect to a database. So I click on Options, Connections. Sorry. My system is just freezing. Unbelong. Access, here you go. So this is how the database connection. So I just clicked on options and connections. So I have already defined a connection. So what you just have to specify the connection name. In my case, it's webinar OLAP. I've defined my connection name as, and then define all other parameters and the credentials that you need to connect to your database. So in my case, it's a MySQL database that I'm using. So I'm just connecting. I'm highlighting the MySQL database and specifying the other connections. I can just click on test to test whether my connection is good. So everything good to go. So I close this. So this is the basic on how we connect to a schema workbench and how we specify the database connection. You can, to create a new schema, just click on File, New Schema, and then you can specify a name for the schema. So this is how you can, and then you can add cube, dimension, all other parameters onto the schema. I have already created examples, so I will just use them. So the first example that we had was the example one. This is the schema file that I already had. I mean, this is same as what I created on my BI server. So I'm just reusing the same one. I've just opened it using File, Open option. I've just opened that example Mondrian file here. So this is how it looks. So what I want, the first thing that I want to specify is, I don't want my month name to appear alphabetically, but I rather want it to appear in the order it comes. So I would specify an ordinal column, what I want to order that based on. In this case, I would like to order it based on the month number. So I just select that, and then I save this, file save, and then I publish. So what this option file publish does is, it will allow me to publish this schema onto my BI server. So I need to specify the URL where I would like to publish this. So in this case, I would like to publish onto my local host 8080 Pentaho, and there would be a publish password. You need to ask the system administrator, and then provide your user credentials, and this should allow you to publish onto the BI server. So I just click, I provide all these credentials, and I just click on OK. It's connecting to the repository, and then it's asking me where, in which folder do I want to publish the schema. So I can select on any folder. I would like to publish it under Tailwheels Analysis, and I just click on Publish. Schema is already existing. So now I go back. Now I would like to take another example just to explain what we can do in Schema Workbench. In the previous example, if you see the example one, let me just open that first. If you see, under each dimension, each column is considered as a hierarchy. We don't want that to happen. We would like to create hierarchies, and we would like to add properties or levels to the hierarchy. We would not like to see everything, every column as a hierarchy. It doesn't look clean. So what I've done in my second example is, I've just modified the same product. I've added a new hierarchy called all products, and I've added all these columns under that. So what I've done here is, I've added a hierarchy products, I've added a hierarchy all product, and then I right click add level. I've added a level product vendor. What I'm doing here is, I'm specifying the name and I'm describing what it really means, product vendor detail, and then I'm specifying what the table is, dim product, and the column name is dim vendor. And I specify what is the type of the column, it's a string, and then I say it's a level type is a regular level type, it's not a time dimension, so I need not select any of the time factors. If it was something to do with the date that I would explain later, I would select the time factor. It could be years, it could be months, it could be weeks. So based on what my parameter is, I would be selecting the relevant time parameter. So this is nothing related to time, so I would just select the regular one. And I don't want to hide this member, so I just say never. This is how I've added the different levels like product line, product name, product description. I want all this information to come under products, and that's why I've created a hierarchy, all products, and I've organized it. If you see customer, it doesn't look organized because every column is a single hierarchy. So in order to organize the columns, we could do that in the Schema Workbench. So this is what I've done here. So and I need to specify the table, what table I'm using. So that's the dim product. Another example that I was referring previously was defining the regular and time considering the other level type, that is for time, that we would use when we deal with the time dimension. So I've just created a simple example for time dimension as well. So if you look, I've just named a dimension by name time. So you can just click on Schema, add dimension to get a new dimension added. This is how I've added. Let me just get rid of it. I don't need that. So this is how I've added a time dimension. I've added a hierarchy called default. So if you click on time, it gives you an option to add hierarchy. So I've just added an hierarchy and I've just named it as default. Underneath that, I've added 3 levels, one year, month, and date. So these are the 3 levels that I've added. So if you And then I've added something called annotation. What this annotation basically does is it allows us to have different filtering options. If I don't use an annotation, for example, in the basic one that I created, I didn't use any annotation. So let me see what my filter options are. Say for example, if I pull in month name, it's taking long, so I'll come back to it. Time it refreshes, I'll just go ahead with my time dimension explanation and then we'll come back to it. So I've added this annotation which provides us to have extra filters. Without annotation, it just gives me filter to select the options, either include the year column or exclude, or it allows me to filter on few parameters. But with the annotation on year, it allows me with additional filter conditions like previous year, next year, all those options. So that's the advantage of adding annotation. It just gives a special menu which is really cool. So that's the reason I've added this annotation. Just click on the level, then just right click to add an annotation. So just add an annotation and then on the annotation right click and add annotation. So it will allow you to add, just define a name, analyzer date format, and I have done it on year, so I would like to pass the C data as YYY. So it basically is of the format YYY, the year column, so that's what I've specified here. You can either, so the next one is the month. I've done the same thing. I've added an annotation with the analyzer format and I've used the month as YYY.mm because I want to see the complete or the month in the form of Jan, Feb. You can also specify just 2 M's if you want to see it a numeric value like 01, 02. Or you can just specify M if you want to see it as 1, 2, 3. So that's a different option that you can specify under your C data. I've done same thing for even my date. So now let's see what the filters that this extra annotation would help us, and let's see how we can now sort our month. So now if I go back to my browser, so let's come up. Let me just select one so it's easy for us. So this is my old data source that I just created on the BI server. So if I click on month and if I click on filter, the only option it gives me is to select from this. It doesn't give me previous year or those extra filters. Now let's compare with the new source that I created using the Schema Workbench. So I go to File, New Analyzer Report. I would like to use my new data source now. So the new data source that I modified in the Schema Workbench is called example2. So I just click on it. Now let me pull the same parameters what I had in Analyzer Report 1 onto Report 3. So I had my product name. So it's a product name. While this is coming up, I would like to explain another feature. Oh, it's already up, so you can use it. Cool. Let me just consider month. It's taking long because it has used. Let me just consider month just to show the example. Now it's actually month. So now it appears just because it's just appearing too many Januaries because we've been considered here. So if I pull in here, then it should sort it based on that. Because I've defined as ordinal columns, that's the reason it did that. So now if I click on my filter, it gives me these pretty options. It gives me the current month, previous month, next month. This option we got just because we added an annotation. Previously we just had the first two options. So that's the advantage of adding an annotation in Schema Workbench. And now, before I conclude, I would like to explain another feature that I've added. That's the property. So the property is if you want to connect all the functional dependent items, say for example for product name, I would like to connect the retail price and buying price. I would like to connect these two measures with the product name. The reason why I would like to connect to the product name is because they are associated with the product name. If I can just pull them in onto the report without pulling the product name. So it doesn't really make sense if I pull them without a product name. Say for example, I didn't have a product name, and if I just pull in the other columns, pull in those two columns, that doesn't really make sense. So if I want to associate, or if I want to add few of the properties where they are functionally dependent on the product name, so I've added these two properties, MSRP, which is the retail price, and the buying price columns along with my product name. Let me show you how I can show those properties, how we can use those properties. So now I bring in my product name. It's already there. Let me just click on the product name as I have the properties. So I have the properties. I can just click on show properties. I can select one. It will just display that, or I can click on both properties, all properties. So it will show me all those, both the values. So that's all for today.